if I may return briefly to liberalism and to what I believe our nation is now facing a turning point in history. And we have a Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, who understands, as a man of history, his place in history, as did previous Conservative Prime Ministers like Margaret Thatcher. They don't go courting the favor of the Fifth Estate or the media. They understand their place in history, what their job is to do, and our party's job and his job is to guide us through one of the most dangerous times economically we have had in Western history. We've had the recession in 2007. Isn't it interesting that our party took power at that very point in 07, 08 when the recession hit, the greatest one since the 1930s? We have an economist as a prime minister. Another interesting coincidence. And who also does not court the media's favor. He has a vision. And when you have a vision and you understand its place in history, you're not too worried about what the Fifth Estate says about you or the chattering class. You have a confidence that inspires confidence in the people and in the electorate. And this conservatism that we represent has grown from the grassroots up, from the Reform Party through the Canadian Alliance, now to the conservatism we have today. And when you conserve, the instinct to conserve is historic, and it goes back long before the 200 years of liberalism that we've worked against. And essentially the liberalism that I'm talking about is the idea that the individual person, me, is sovereign. Their desires, their wants, they are sovereign, as opposed to any societal attachment, as opposed to we. Me is opposed to the idea of we. Well, that's not how conservatism took power in this country. It understood that the people, when they speak together in lines of societal attachment that are outside of government, they're outside the claims of government. The liberal view is that government is going to guarantee you from cradle to grave your freedom from any attachment to a societal obligation, either morally or familially. Ultimately, the family itself is outside of your obligation. And at the core of the Conservative Party is a dedication to families. And that's what I stand for and Stephen Harper stands for. Families being helped at tax time, cutting their taxes, training them, offering them a world in which free trade creates a new economy and 1.2 million new jobs in the teeth of the worst recession we have had since the 1930s. We believe in safe streets for our people, for our young people, for our old people, and laws that will guarantee this. We believe in caregiving for seniors and for young people who need it, and the funding for that as well. We believe in balancing the budget, and after the budget's balanced, going after debt. The single biggest economic actor in the coming months, and this will happen before the election, I believe, is a collapse of certain economic institutions undergirding the world economy because of over-indebtedness. They call it the debt bomb. You'll begin to see currencies collapse and various other things come to order in the disorder of massive money printing by central banks and speculation by international corporations and much else that is going to lead to a collapse of a house of cards. But in the midst of all this, Andrew Saxton at our AGM has given us the knowledge that Mr. Harper and Ms. Merkel of the Canadian and the German economies respectively are offering the leadership in the world at the moment in the G8. They are the only ones who will be solvent. I've read the economists on the left, I've read the economists on the right, and I keep hearing this clause again and again. They say, well, When the music stops, when all the money printing stops, all the quantitative easing, all the flooding of the world with cheap money, when that stops, when the music stops and everyone has to find a seat and the whole world economy is restructured, there'll be two countries that are solvent and standing. They talk about Europe and Germany, which basically owns most of Ireland and Iceland's debt and now Greece's, the German taxpayer. And then they talk about this country called Canada. They say this will all happen to the other countries, and I'm afraid to our neighbor to the south, but there'll be one country, they keep saying, this will all happen to just about everyone, and their lack of sovereign balance sheets being balanced or in the black. Except Canada, of course. Except Canada. When I kept seeing that from economists on the left, economists on the right, then I knew we had a historic prime minister.